I'll get started. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, you're supposed to say. Good afternoon. Thank you. Back like Catholic school, you got to say these things. My name's Terry Rice, and I'm the Director of Transportation for the county. I think we have more people at this public meeting than we had at some of the public meetings back in the design. I'm just going to kind of moderate. I'll do some introductions and moderate the discussion here. And Tim Freeler and Henry Herzig from the county are going to go through the objectives of what we're here today, listen to you, tell you where we are with our schedule and what we're looking to do as we go forward, as well as listen to some of your concerns. And we'll stay here as long as you have questions, then we hopefully can answer them. And I do want to have a couple other introductions to let people know if people want to stand, they certainly can stand. But from our county legislature, we have you have two legislators. How big is East Ridge Road? You have to have two legislators to cover it. And we have Joe Carbone and Joe Morelli are both here from the county legislature, two of your legislators. From the town, you saw walk in earlier. I think she still went here someplace. Mary Joyce Durizio, she's back there, the supervisor. Chief of Police Boyan is in the back, and your Commissioner of Public Works, Pat Meredith. From the State DOT, Frank DeCostanza is here. They're our partners with this, and they're the ones that make sure we get state and federal money to pay for all this great work that we're doing out there. From our consulting team, to my right, we have Mike Molino, who many of you may have seen out on the field. He's the resident engineer. He's in charge of overseeing with the contractor the work that's being done. And Mark Belvia was the project manager for the design. And with our contractor, Villager Construction, that's doing the work, is Susan Walsh. So did I miss anybody that would like to say? I know there's other RGRT, Dan Kenyon's here, and there's some others. And so just want to do those introductions. Tim's going to do this. The thought behind here, we were thinking about having this a meeting to bring everybody back together, but it's actually, I will give the credit to the drug doctor. And Dan kind of said it'd be nice if we got Dan Burko, if we got everybody back together and talked about what happened on phase 1 as well as how you're going to go about finishing phase 2, 3, 4, and 5, all the way down to Culver Road. So we thought that was a good idea, and that's why we're having that meeting. So Dan, thanks for your suggestion, and we hope we answer your questions today. We might not have all your answers, but we'll certainly get them and get them back to you. And we want to see this project come to fruition and with as least inconvenience to all the businesses as we can to try to build this project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Freeler, who will run through. And if you can, just let Tim get through everything he wants to present, as you see on the agenda, and then we'll open it up for questions, because he might answer your question that you might have up in number 2, and he'll answer it under number 4. So let him get through his somewhat presentation. It's not a formal presentation. There's no PowerPoint or anything, but just let him get through what he's here to try to explain to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, and again, welcome to you folks. Does everyone have a copy of the agenda that was at the table there? If you didn't, I hope we have some extras. If not, feel free to go grab one now. It is just a brief overview of some of the topics that we're going to talk about, give you something to take some notes on or write some of your things down as well. As Terry said, we typically do not have public meetings such as this during construction. Our outreach is primarily through our newsletters, which we've published, and I'll reference a few of those. And one of the things that we wanted to gather today is, has everyone seen or getting any of our newsletters? If you could have a show of hands, that would be helpful. Then I'll know who may have seen this document before. Okay, not even half, okay. Now this is going to all the property owners, and we're going to do a better job of distributing that to some of the people who may be renting or leasing space and are more in tune with the project, but we're going to do better at that. If you could, and we have a sign-up sheet and it'll come at the end of the meeting, add your name to our mailing list. We will update that so that future newsletters, both the spring, summer, and fall, as the project moves forward, you'll get these in the mail. These are very descriptive, and we also have a link on our notice there that they're available on the county website. So I wanted to give an update, kind of where we've been, 2011, 2012, not in a great amount of detail of what's transpired, and then looking ahead to 2013, this year that we're looking ahead. The utility work, as most of you know, started in 2011. It continued all through last winter and throughout the calendar year 2012. That's been a variety of gas work, electric work, telephone. You wouldn't know which one they're working on because it's all being done by private subcontractors, but that work has been going on for now probably a year and a half in most cases. Unfortunately, it's not done, and that's a problem that we've been working with the utilities on, and something that's been a concern of ours starting back when they said they were going to be done, which was June of 2012. Then it was the end of the year, and now it's still not done. Our highway construction, our contract, started July 10th, 2012. And just prior to the start of construction, a newsletter did go out dated June 27th. And for those of you that may have seen that, what that did is it outlined the project description, gave us our current project status, gave an overall schedule, and some project contact information. The project, as we came out of the design, working with T.Y. Lin and the county and some folks here that had come through when we've looked at displays, we broke it down into 5 segments, phases 1 through 5. And those 5 segments are shown on there. I will briefly go over them just so that you may know how the project was originally intended to be constructed. The first phase, which started in July, started down at Marburger, went to Hudson Avenue. That's phase 1. Phase 2 was from Hudson to Carter. Phase 3, Carter to Portland. Phase 4, Portland to North Goodman / Kings Highway. And then Phase 5, the longest phase, from North Goodman to east of Culver Road.
I'm getting ready for my second career in case Banner retires.
Okay? That picture just depicts the 5 segments. So that was done intentionally based on input that we received through our public outreach. We bid it that way. That's the way the contract documents were set up. And the intent of that was that we would get into a particular phase, we would implement the detour, go to the one-way, as we did in phase 1, build everything in phase 1, up through and including the top course, finish everything, move to phase 2, and work our way right down. The intent was that our schedule that was submitted by the contractor was to complete phases 1 and 2 in 2012, phase 3, 4, and 5 this year, 2013. That was the way we wanted to start it, and that's the way we did approach it this particular year, last year. The project is really considered a rehab. For those of you that don't know what we're doing in the pavement, the middle portion of the roadway, for those of you who are involved in the design, the middle portion of the roadway, the middle 30 feet, is the old state road that was taken over from the state that has a concrete sub-base out in the middle, and we are rebuilding the edges, new curbs, sidewalks, and then paving the whole thing. There's some geometrical improvements that are being done at some of the intersections, but in earnest, the middle 30 feet is being retained. We're reconstructing the outer edges and so forth. As you can imagine, with a concrete sub-base 30 feet wide in the middle, all of the utilities are crammed into the outside, and that's no surprise to us. We knew that. That's where everything was mapped. That's where all the record drawings showed everything, and that's where all the relocations have been going on, because of we want to maintain and preserve that 30 feet of concrete, because that's what we're trying to save some money in that. However, that makes for a tight corridor when a lot of facilities are in a tight, either one side or the other, they do cross over. So it's no surprise that the utilities are there. However, given their locations, has been somewhat of a challenge. As in any road construction project, you have to do the underground work first. We have to go in, we have to put our drainage structures in, we have to put our piping in, we have to get all that before we can pave over top of it and finish it off. For the most part, the existing drainage system, the pipes, the network of pipes that are under East Ridge Road are being retained. They're old concrete pipes, but we videoed them all. Most of them are in relatively good shape. There were a few portions that needed to be relined and a few pieces that are being replaced. But in earnest, for the most part, the mainline storm sewer system was being retained and reused. The majority of the drainage work involved replacement of the individual structures, the actual inlets where the water is being collected, and a lot of the old manholes that were from the 30s. The existing construction of those were back years ago. They used to use cinder blocks, and the salt deteriorates those, and you can see as you drive down there, the majority of our failures are right around our catch basins where they're collapsing and the blocks are falling in. So as you look down through there, there's many, many locations, well over 100 structures that we were going to intend to take the old one out, put the new one in. Not changing its location because we're reusing the existing pipes. For the most part, that was the intent of the structures. Now, that sounds easy to do. And on the drawings where the utilities are, that is what the objective was. However, what we have found is that every time we dig one of these up, it's a new utility either in front of it, or behind it, or next to it, or under it, or in some cases way off from even where the field guys marked it. So everyone has become a little bit of a field team meeting. How can we adjust it? Who needs to move their stuff? Slow down our production. When we do this under the detour, these makes the detour longer, and that's not what we were trying to hope for. So the utilities, while they are not done with their work, even some of the existing stuff that's left behind has been in conflict. It was not foreseen. It was not where it was mapped. It wasn't even where they staked it out 3 days earlier with their paint marks. In some cases it was 5 feet away. In some cases the utility's right up against the structure we're trying to take out, and we can't put the new one in right in its place. So a lot of issues that Mike has been going through on a daily basis, Henry going through, meeting with some of the utility reps, that's led to a lot of, not necessarily redesign, but a lot of reconfiguration within these holes. And that has not led to a particularly productive way of putting our storm sewer in. So hence, phase one did take longer, and that was the primary reason. Once we got the structures in, I'll say the excavation, the curbing, the sidewalk, the road paving, that did go with the amount of time that we had thought was going to take. We weren't delayed on that. Weather, it always comes into play, but not so much. So the utility issue is an ongoing issue, and I'm going to talk a little bit as we go forward what we've done since completion of phase one, which was in mid to late October, right after we finished top course, to try to rectify that situation for future phases. Putting in the underground storm sewer under a detour is not, that's going to hold us up, because every time we find one of these locations, we have to make a modification. Most projects, which we have more work to do, we just go down the road and we can start doing something else. We can be productive, we can add to it, but when we're confined to a particular segment between Marburger and Hudson, those are the only ones we can work on. So as we get down and we get down to the last 2 or 3, if we can't get those in, there's no place else that we can go to on the project, because they were all intended to be done under detour conditions. We don't have to maintain traffic over them. We do one side, we do the other. So we relied on record drawings for that information. That we did not have a lot of other records to go by. The utilities gave us that. We mapped them. They checked it out. Their field people are laying it out based on record drawings. So it's not a matter of people doing the wrong thing in the field. We have some bad records to deal with. However, they are where they are when we dig it up. That we can't change. So what we have done is we've met with the utilities, and I'll say when we met with the utilities, it's not only the field reps. We've had people from the vice presidents on down to show the urgency of not only getting this work done and keep things moving forward with power shutoffs and transitions, but that they get this and get it done, the new stuff, so that the old stuff can be cut dead and removed if need be. In order to avoid finding out these utility conflicts during excavation of the actual structure, we've asked each utility from phase 2 through 5 to go down and test pit every location and give us an accurate record of where your facilities are around those structures. If it's behind it, if it's in front of it, check the depth so that we can revise our drainage table or come up with an alternative plan or give direction to relocate that ahead of time so that we're not doing that while the road is under one way. In addition to that, our project team, Mike and Henry, and our design people have gone down from phase 2 through 5, looked at every single structure in there, the existing structures, to see if there's anything out in the road that we can eliminate from the project so that we don't have to dig it up. Can we alter that structure? Can we just put a new rooftop on it and rebuild the top 3 feet? Can we keep that? And as a result of that, and I will say this is significant, we eliminated 50, we had 73 manholes to be replaced. These are manholes, these are where the connection points, these are more out in the middle of Eastridge Road, going all the way down through there. We have eliminated, as a result of detailed inspections and climbing in there and sounding them with a hammer and flashlights and everything else, we've eliminated 54 of those. So we will not be replacing 54 that were originally scheduled. So that's less work that we're going to be doing out in the road. Less conflicts with utilities because we're going to leave the existing one right there. We're just going to work from the top slab up. We're renegotiating some of the quantities and the scope on that, and that's actually a way for us to do less work to get us back on schedule. There is about 1,300 lineal feet of storm sewer that was scheduled for replacement out of the whole 2.5 miles where we were only doing a couple thousand feet. We've just changed our scope on that. We're going to do a relining of that, which will not require us to dig that out, fight with the utilities and finding, because all of ours has to go gravity, and as soon as there's a duct bank in the way, something's got to move. We're going to reline those with some pipelining technologies that are available. They won't require excavation, and they won't require utility relocation, or avoidance. So there's some things in the project that we've reduced the scope on that we're looking to do. We've also been working now with the contractor to see if there's any opportunities for us to begin this drainage work out of sequence, I'll call it, and that means out of the particular phase 1, phase 2, moving ahead so that we can get all this drainage work done, get all the utility conflicts resolved so that when we move through here, we can just start doing the road work and we won't have to have these particular delays relying on other people to do things. There is additional cost for that. As the project was bid, as I said, we were going to install these in a detour situation where you didn't have to maintain traffic. If we start jumping ahead into phase 2, 3, 4, 5 and doing structure work, we need to put the pavement back in a temporary fashion. We need to put a frame and grate back on there so that it collects the water during rain events. We can't just abandon the whole system and wait for the highway project to catch up. We can be somewhat creative on that, but we do need to address that. Unlike in the detour situation, we can just leave them with a board over them, and it's not in the through lane of traffic. We don't have to worry about it. Sandy soils, it finds its way into the openings, and we can deal with it that way. So there is some additional cost with that, and we're working with our contractor to see if we can agree on some scope of work that's doable from a budget standpoint, but that also allows them to move forward. The other work that we're looking to have done, you'll see some circles on that drawing for you those are the particular intersections. At the end of each phase is a lot of intersection work. And if we can jump ahead, and a lot of it was scheduled to be done at night because of the fact that bringing that down to stone, putting pipes across the road, conduit and other things, the signal system, we want to do that at night. If we can move ahead out of phase and jump down and do some of these intersections ahead of time, then when the particular detour is implemented, it's done at both ends. The intersection, we just have the straight run in between. Another option that we want to throw out here today and see if there's any particular feedback is that we're considering combining phases 2 and 3 into one phase. Now, phase 2, the phase 2, 3, and 4 are all about the same length. But as I said earlier, when we're confined to a particular phase and we can only work with that in the detour and we run into a particular conflict, we don't have a whole lot of places to go. We can't move down the road because that's not under the detour. We got to set up a lane closure and do all things differently. If we make that a bigger segment, it allows us to maybe jump around and coordinate that a little better. The thought being that the sum, if Phase 2 and Phase 3 was a certain amount of weeks, that if we combine Phase 2 and 3 into one phase, we could do it in less time than the combination of those two individual phases. We don't have a detailed schedule on that. We have not agreed to that yet. There's folks involved from RTS and others that would need to be part of that decision, and we need their feedback from that, and we're working on that. But as we're here today, some feedback from you folks. If you are in Phase 2 or 3, if you're in Phase 4 or 5, maybe you care, maybe you don't, but you're welcome to comment as well. We'd like to get some feedback on that, if that sounds like you would be for that or against it, or if you're neutral and you don't care and you just want it to get it done. That's why we're here. We want to get it done as well. Our current plan, as it stands today, as we stand in front of you, and as Terry said, we have not altered this plan yet, is to begin and implement the detour in April of 2013 for Phase 2. There is going to be some work that's going on ahead of that, as there is now with utilities, and our contractor may be doing some as well. We and the contractor want to be aggressive in this and finish as much of this project in 2013 as possible. It is their desire to finish it, as well as the county's, and we are doing everything we can to work with them and the utilities and to make that happen. We are confident that Phases 2, 3, and 4 will certainly be completed. Phase 5 being the longest one, we can't leave that open over the winter or half done or anything. If we start on it, we have to get it to a point where we can pave it back to a lease binder, put the striping down, and maybe if we had to come back and top it in 2014, we could do that under night, but it wouldn't require any detours the following year. As we said, any of these delays in earlier phases only affect the next phase. So if Phase 2 goes poorly, and Phase 3 and then 4, Phase 5 takes it on the chin. And for those of you that are down in Phase 5, that being dependent on work in another phase is not the most desirable position to be in. However, if we can expedite this with some creative work with the utilities as well as our contractor, agree on some costs that we can keep the project within our budgeted amounts, and expedite it so that we can get all this done. There's certain efficiencies and a desire on everyone's part, both as our project team, the contractor, and others, to get this done so that we don't have to be doing preferably no work in 2014. If we had to do some, very little in 2014, but none requiring a detour. So those are some of the hardships, some of the things we've done, and some of the things we're looking at, none of which are set in stone, but we wanted to bring you folks up to date on what we've been thinking about, what we have been doing, and get some feedback and some concerns if there are any, either from a communication standpoint, from a construction standpoint, ideas that you may have that we can share with Mike, who's out here on the front lines each and every day, Henry, who's out here each and every day as well, working with Mike. So that's all I had. I will turn it over now. We can field some questions and have a general discussion on some items that you may have of interest to you.
Don't go too far, you might have to answer some questions. So, open up for questions. Since Dan asked for the meeting, we'll let him go first.
I really appreciate you coming down today and doing this. I know there's a lot of concerns about the project. And I think just hearing some of the things you have to say, we know it's got to be done. We know it's a mess. And I think that just addressing our questions, it's really appreciated by us and fellow merchants and things. I guess the thing that I look at, the major problem is when you start doing a detour, it really limits access to the road. The road's already a mess anyhow, so I don't think digging up further down the road is going to be any more disruptive than it is now. You can't even drive down the thing. It's like a washboard no matter where you go. So I think if you can do any of that, but I would love to see us minimize the one-way traffic to as short a period of time as possible, and as much as you can do to eliminate that period of time, I think is going to be a benefit to all of us. We know that you have to do it at some point, but anything you can do to eliminate or shorten that time would be, I think, the biggest benefit to Ridge Road. People can get up and down, even though it's pretty bad. It's still passable. So I guess that's my main comment. The other little caveat is Portland Avenue is also under construction. construction, I guess, too, so I don't know how that's gonna tie in, and I don't know how long a project that is, but it seems like people can avoid Ridge by cutting down some of these side roads, and then Portland Avenue is a main artery coming up and down, too. It's usually the route I usually take to work, so if I have a detour there and a detour on Ridge Road, this leaves us less places to go, so I guess I'd like to know about that, too, so.
Well, yep, Portland Avenue will be, it's going to be hopefully approved award by our legislature at the March meeting, I believe. And we do have to coordinate, certainly to coordinate the work on East Ridge Road with Portland Avenue. The southern part of Portland from East Ridge Road down is more of some curbing work, but more of a milling resurfacing. It's not necessarily a full reconstruction of the sides like we have on East Ridge, so it's a little bit less intensive work. To the north is a little bit more intense, where we're doing shoulder work and stuff. But we will coordinate with that and try to minimize, so we can have it for, certainly, we need to have that. Portland's got to be the detour for at least one of the phases of East Ridge, and if we combine the two phases, it'll be right off the bat is the phase. But we can work with both contractors to kind of, when we want them to be working on Portland to the south, or there's no detour work needed on any part of Portland. There's no detour planned at all, so Portland will always be open to two-way traffic. It's going to be slow, but it'll always be open. There is a couple right turn lanes that we're creating on Portland Avenue, one into the hospital and one northbound onto 104. But we can work around with Portland and coordinating that with East Ridge Road. But I would like to, I guess, your comment of trying to work ahead, and that's kind of what the utilities always are doing. So when we come in with a project always and say, we're going to start on this date and we're going to be done about this date. Meanwhile, hopefully utilities were already out there working, and you'd say, well, that's the county out there. No, that was actually utilities out there, and the utilities are still working, as you heard Tim say. So they're definitely continuing to work, and our thought at this time, and we're working with our contractor, and I can say our contractor certainly wants to get this done and work with us to work out a phase, as Tim said, to try to get as much done so that we minimize the time that the detour is in place. That is what we're looking to do. That's what our contractor is looking to do, and as well as some of the work that we're looking to do and changing some of the scope of the work we're doing with our storm sewer will help alleviate that. Whether we can get totally back on track and get all 4 phases done this year, that's a challenge. And we can look here and say if the weather's great, it might happen without doing anything else. If we have weather problems at all, then all bets are off. We are, as Tim said, working with the contractor now to see possibly what stuff and what the cost would be for them to work out a sequence, and to see if that's something that we want to do so they can do some work this year, provided the utility, before the construction starts in Detour in April. That's provided they have a free and clear area to go to where the utilities are done. Unfortunately, there's been a lot, as you heard Tim say, there's been a lot of surprises both on some of our own storm sewer system, but also where the utilities are that is not where anybody thought they were. So, yes, sir.
Will the curb line or locations or the location of the sidewalks be changed?
For the most part, no.
Specifically between Hudson and Carter, Phase 2.
There's a right turn lane that's being added in front of Walgreens at the corner of Hudson and Carter, or the Hudson and Ridge, excuse me.
Westbound.
Westbound. But no, for the most part, between Hudson and Carter, the rest of the sidewalks and curbing are going to be replaced and made new, but in the same location.
Same location, okay.
Except for where our right turn lanes are.
No,
There's another
this-
question back
In
there.
the middle, we're in.
Yes, right. All the way to the back.
I had a question about the business entrances. I heard that you're gonna, when you're working from the business, you'll block off half the entrance and do the other half, like one day and the other day. But I know some other businesses have the same problem. I'm with the Hampton Inn,
we can always look at that. I mean, normally, if there's only one, if there's two accesses to a property, and there are many places that have two or more accesses, in some places along East Ridge Road, we might close one when we're doing the sidewalk or the curb work. And that's really the only time we have to be there and let that cure. Not even the side, not even the curb. The curb is granite, so it's just when we're putting the granite in place. So it's really the sidewalk work, but I guess we'd have to look at each specific location on whether there's something else we could do to open up, or whether that's going to be an issue. When they're right there working, they usually have flag people and et cetera like that. Am
Yeah,
right,
can I
Mike?
jump in with
You
a
can.
comment on that? Yeah, every driveway is a little bit different, and the situation is a little bit different. We have the roadway pretty much torn up, the driveway torn up in some cases, so we can temporarily widen, with stone and things like that. But every case is a little bit different. Obviously, it's nicer when there's multiple driveways and you can close one down at a time. We have had to do things like use a driveway half at a time, but in some cases, the other half of the driveway isn't yet constructed, so we can sort of put more stone there. So every case is different. What I can tell you is we are going to maintain access to every location, and it's just the particulars on how we do that. We do need to maintain driveways and keep your businesses going and maintain the access. Sometimes narrower, sometimes different scenarios possible.
Another thing that somebody directed traffic, your business is within 10 cars today. You said something about doing night work. How will there be somebody that's available to direct traffic in that area at night as well?
Yes, absolutely. We have flag,
Coming and going
when we're,
this day.
right, when we're working at, during the nighttime operations, basically it's the full crews and operations of people there with flaggers and so forth. The nighttime operations, as it stands right now, is the paving operations in the main stretch, which is where you are, not at a corner. It would be the paving operations of top. So when which is the last thing that happens in the phase, and when that happens, there will be enough flag people out there to flag people around the operation.
And just those of you, I know maybe we didn't have quite enough to go around. The contact information is down at the bottom of this, of the notice or the agenda. Contact, Mike is out here, Mike Molino, if he can stand up. He's the one, people should have seen him. If they're in phase one, they saw a lot of him probably. But he's the one that's out there every day and will be the one that can help you. Or Henry Herzig from my office that's out there as well. But Mike's out there every day along the contract. Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Good afternoon. To add to that comment, one of the things that the contractor does do is he notifies each business the day before, that day, what's going to happen. As was mentioned, the only time that the driver would be limited to half the width would be when we're placing the curb and or doing the concrete sidewalk, because the concrete sidewalk has to cure. I don't believe any business was left out of access at any time during phase one. So to rest assured, the people in the field for Villager Construction are actually doing their best to notify each business and what's going on and maintain access. As Terry said, I'm out there every day. Field people are out there, the contractor. Communication is, I think they did a very great job in phase one to talk to each business of what's happening each and every day. Feel free to speak to a superintendent or a foreman on site, or even give me a call at the field office, and we can address these issues and hear your concerns.
Can we request to be notified more than a day in advance, just because our guests are coming, our patrons come from out of town, and we want them to have a good experience, so that they return. And, trying to notify them a day ahead can be difficult. If we can notify them in advance that the construction's going on, that this is going to be happening, especially in the summer months when people want to come and go to Seabreeze, and they come to go to
You
the
can
beach, so-
contact Mike, and he will know, but I will say anytime when he's going to say this is when the curb's going to be there, the sidewalk's going to be there, then it's weather dependent a lot of times. So it could be we plan on being there, or we plan on paving here, and then it rains, we don't pave. So just got to bear with us on that. It's like we're not any better than what happens with the weather, and the weather people, get it right, 50% of the time, so.
Is there anyone representing utilities at this meeting today?
I don't think there's any, is there any utility here? We have met with utilities.
But you indicated regarding the infrastructure, like for example, the telephone conduit system that goes down East Ridge Road. Everything that they ever did was documented. I mean, from the 1900s. I'm very familiar with that because I was part of that organization.
Right. And I think what happened in each of the utilities is a little bit different, but with Frontier, the really kind of what is, and this is typical what happens a lot of times on projects, is that we give them our plans several years ahead when we're looking at what we're going to do. And they look and say, well, we want to upgrade, or we got to look to see where our stuff is. Do we need to move out of your way? It might be to the extent that it is so complicated or so costly to move something a little bit out of our way. They kind of usually sometimes want to wait to see, hey, when your contractor's there, maybe we won't be in your way, and we'll kind of move once your contractor's there. And so some of the stuff, they've done some things, but they haven't moved everything out of the way because they looked at it that way. And so they know where they were, but they didn't really know whether they were going to be in conflict with some of our new stuff to what point.
But I have to add as well that, sorry, so Henry speaking here, I've been called out there plenty of times in Phase 1 where, it hasn't been where the record plan said it was. Honestly, the record plans were off, sometimes several feet, which is a big deal when you've got a narrow corridor where things are stacked up next to each other. Can they get it right 100% of the time with record plans? No. But we did have a lot of issues with not just utilities, even some of the original road plan items were not as we had seen them in the field once we started digging things up, unfortunately.
So, but we are working with the utilities to get them we're trying to minimize any conflicts they're going to have with our contractors so they can be out of our contractors' way. That won't happen totally. There'll be some cases where they will decide not to and they want to work with our contractor. Well, that's the stuff that ends up taking time.
And that's also one of the reasons why the utilities aren't done and they're still out there, is because we've asked them to reevaluate. We said in Phase 1, a lot of the record plans were off. We need you to go and do test pits and get a visual on a lot of this, because obviously the record plans are a bit faulty in some cases, and they've done that for us, and their scope of work has expanded quite a bit because they did find additional conflicts and so forth ahead of time. That's why they're still out there. They were supposed to be finished, but we keep finding things that are going to be in conflict. So they continue to work on that.
It would be probably pertaining to laterals off the main path.
Yeah, the laterals as well, main lines as well.
But the main paths have always been documented. I mean, down Ridge Road, it may shift sides, because I know it's on the south side by Hudson Avenue, and then up this direction, it's on the north side.
You're totally right. And then when it's off about a foot by what they put on the drawings back then. Yeah, and then it's off about a foot. That changes everything when you're in the field and you're excavate it, and it's like, well, we thought it was right here, and no, it's actually a foot. Well, that foot makes a big difference.
Supposedly there's like a 6-foot leeway. The bank is probably...
We don't have that luxury of 6 feet.
Not on this
everything's
job.
too
I
tight.
understand it.
Yeah. There's a lot of utilities out in that small one lane on each side, in essence, in some cases, or even less than that, along East Ridge Road.
And the reduction of the manholes is due to technology.
Well, we're not reducing the number of our storm manholes.
I'm talking about the utilities.
Oh, okay. I was just saying what Tim had said about he went from 73 to say we're taking 54 away, I think you said. Right. And that's where they're still out in the field. It's just less work. It doesn't have to be totally removed and replaced with all the conflict. We're saving that manhole, and we can just replace the upper part of it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned detour. I know in Phase 1, the detour, you had to go down and around to get to the post office and all that, because it's a narrow road down there. But as far as I can see, Phase 2 through 5, you've got a much wider road. 2 lanes in each direction plus turning lane. So my question is that all going to be switched over to 1 lane, 1 direction at some time during this? Or is it going to be able to do both?
No, we're maintaining the one direction at all times. We're maintaining eastbound direction.
But I think your question was, the detour is going to have 2 lanes in one direction because, there's people that are going to want to turn left and so forth, and we felt that it would be better for the flow of traffic to maintain 2 lanes in one direction.
Yeah, we're only maintaining one in one direction. We're maintaining, and then at the intersections we'll have left turn lanes. But even though you got 5 lanes wide, we did not put it out to bid this way. It can always be built, but it would be a 3-phase type thing to try to do it because you'd have to do if you look at how go down on Mount Hope down by U of R that they try to do that. They're trying to maintain traffic. So you do one side, you do the other side, and then you got to do the middle when you have that. So we felt that it would be quicker, as well as there was a convenient, good detour right close by with 104 to detour the one direction. So we are going to detour. Our plan is and continues to be, is we will detour one direction each phase. 104 is and then coming back up on those, whatever the streets are, whether it be come up Carter or whether it's Portland or Goodman or whatever, yes. Yes, sir.
How are you dealing with property damage? I'm in the section between Carter and Portland, so it really hasn't started other than probably utility right now. I've got a lot of equipment that's parked on my property. There's some damage to some things that I fixed a year and a half ago. And I'm just wondering how it gets put back into place.
Property, I don't know what kind of what's been damaged. The project has damaged it? Damaged what? I don't know what.
There was a pole, utility pole that they had to keep in place, and there was a big truck that was parked there with anchors, and the asphalt that I just paid a lot of money for a year ago is not in the same shape that it was. So I'm wondering about property damage.
Okay, if we've done, I would say get a hold of, call Mike, and if it's something that it's part of our project, or we would deal with it might be the contractor's responsibility to kind of address that, or it could be something that's going to be done as part of the project anyways.
Is this the Rite Aid store location? No. Okay, because maybe it's another pole hold location. Right. I believe all the pole holds, especially in that section, east of Phase 1 have been all due to utility work that RG&E's put in a gas main or electric conduit. And if you give us a call, we can direct you to the utility companies as well.
That's right. I forgot about that. It could have been utility work already.
In those phases, it was the utility companies for the most part.
Yeah, our contractor has not done, or has done very little work east of Hudson. I don't know if they've done any work east of Hudson.
They have done some, but not much.
Not much. So it probably was a utility, and we might be able to help you know what that utility was. And it was a private contractor, but you go to that utility company to put a claim in, is what you would do, and then they would probably say, hey, we're being indemnified by our private contractor, and it would go to them. But you can check, I would still say, Mike is a great resource because he could look and say, maybe whatever's happening there, maybe it's going to be taken care of as part of our project, and it's not, and we'll be doing it as, the asphalt work anyway, so it's not something worth putting a claim in.
That truck was there for quite some time, and I believe there was a lane closure at that point. It's where they had the Jersey barriers set up in the road, I believe.
For utility work.
Yeah, it was there for a couple of weeks at least.
Then I can find out whether it was electric, gas, or telephone. The utilities were working in those locations, and if it was holding a pole, it's because there's a large excavation right next to that pole. If they don't hold the pole could fall over. So,
No question. I mean,
absolutely.
half of my parking.
Sure. And
It damaged my parking lot. Had to be done, but I'm just wondering who to go to.
There was a question up here, right here, sir.
Scott Zampatori, Chief of the Ridge Collar Fire Department. Your detour or lane closure is going to be, traffic's only going to be eastbound? Is that correct?
Yes, that's how it was for Phase 1, and that's what it'll continue, and that's what it's been since the the plans, and I think we talked to your guys' office at one time as well as RGRTA, what the best direction was.
I don't know if anyone's talked to our fire department, but that's 60% of our calls are west of East Ridge and Culver, and that's going to double response times and directly affect our response to neighboring fire districts. I don't think we've been contacted about that.
Oh, it would have been several years ago.
We did meet back, I don't remember
Probably
the exact.
09.
It was at least 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We did sit down with the fire department and talk to them and discuss that. I know it wasn't the ideal thing for the location of the fire department there, but we did sit down and discuss it with the fire department previously. Again, that we started to discuss that probably at least 3 years ago.
So if that conversation happened, we were aware that we made a complaint then about it, but the first phase was in St. Paul's district and it didn't affect their direction of travel, but it significantly impacts the Ridge Culver Fire District. Significantly. It is very drastically going to increase our response time.
I was at the one meeting that you talked about, that we had a round table right here,
Right.
and county traffic was here.
That's us.
Okay, and I was explaining, I don't know, somebody's in the audience out here was explaining that the purpose of going eastbound traffic was for detours to be able to make right-hand turns.
Rights versus lefts, you got it.
Well, for somebody going about their daily business, that's great, but when we're trying to get from Ridge and Culver to Portland and East Ridge Road, taking 104 is not an option, because to take the service road, it's a complete bottleneck at Goodman and 104 on the service road, and that's the only access we have. We don't take that route now with East Ridge and 104 because of that reason. It's just, there's no way, it's granite curb, right side, left side, you can't go up and around, people get panicked, that's our worst intersection that there is. So that complaint that we had last year was basically somewhat on deaf ears, just because it's going to be right hand, this is the way it's going to be. But that's a huge impact on our response time. I mean, the road, like Sir Thomas was saying, the road's 5 lanes wide. At some point, whether it's 2 lane, if you have 2 lanes going eastbound and an emergency lane coned off, something other than eastbound only, because that's just, in my opinion, just not acceptable. It's just, it's not good business.
There's also a K-2 school that they would have to, it would take them probably 3 times as long to get to Ivan Green School from the firehouse as it would if it was in the westbound direction on behalf of the school district.
And we can meet with the fire department. I can tell you, there, with how much traffic was going to be, is detoured, we would have, and we got to consider all. Consider it all, but left turns are very hard to make in a detour, and adding a lot of traffic that is used to go in one direction through and now is going to make a left turn up a street, we'll have traffic backed up on 104. So we have to look at that as well. But we can talk to you guys. Yes, sir.
All right, we're survivors of phase 1. I figured I'd come over here and make my presence known. But my question is about the Hudson Avenue intersection. Is the north and south construction done on Hudson Avenue and the 2 new turning lanes?
No. Why don't you say what we still have to do?
Yeah, we do have to install that northbound right turn lane and then the westbound right turn lane on Ridge at the Hudson intersection. So that's both on the east side of the intersection, and then we also have to, on that side of the intersection, put in the new curbing, and down the legs of the intersection, I believe all we have left is milling and paving, which is a fairly easy part of the project on those 2. Mike, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I recall having to do on the legs of Hudson?
That's correct. We didn't finish the Phase 2 portion of the intersection. Each intersection was originally designed to be done in quadrants to coincide with each phase, Phase 1A, Phase 1B, Phase 2A, Phase 2B. So the Hudson half of the intersection was not done. The contractor did box out across the road, but did not finish the widening or the curb lane on the Phase 2 portion. As we mentioned here, Tim and Terry, we're looking at another option of doing intersections ahead of the detour to minimize that problem. When we get to it in that phase, we're done. So it was one of the options we're looking forward to doing to try to help the project.
My understanding was that the intersection work was going to be done at night.
Yes.
It still will.
Yes, and so to answer your question, the only thing remaining is that those turn lanes and the milling and resurfacing down and up and down on Hudson.
The turn lanes won't be done at night, but the intersection work, we will not be detouring traffic on involving Phase 1 again. How about that? I know Tom Shaler was very interested in that. He couldn't be here, but he was interested in that. He called me weekly. Yes, sir.
What is your expected completion date of Phase 2?
Phase 2, we have not got an updated schedule from our contractor, and it's really, we haven't gotten because we're still working with them to decide on what advanced work they may do.
Considering Phase 1, short of a disaster, was 5 months, approximately. I mean, you're expecting these because of the preliminary work you're doing, manholes you've eliminated, and whatever work you can get done in advance would be great, but...
Phase 2 will not take as long as Phase 1. Yeah, I know. And as soon as, once we have determined what the contractor can do and what the cost is this winter possibly, weather permitting, that may enable them to, that much less work that they have to do come on that before they go to the detour. I mean, the whole idea, what we're trying to do is do more work out of sequence, if you say, so you might see construction going on, but the detour won't be in place. We're trying to minimize the length of time the detour is in place.
The deepest part of the dig is what, the sewers? So you've got 1,300 feet to do, or 1,300 feet that has already been relined?
We're going to now reline instead of replacing, and then putting in the manholes is probably the deepest, and we're replacing, not having to do a bunch of them, but we still have to do all the catch basins, all the drop inlets that carry the water on the side, which we've now, so we do have to do those, and they can do those out of sequence as well. And we're looking with them to do that so that when we go to a detour, it's what we call the box out. It's the curb, it's the stone, it's removing that, putting the asphalt back in.
So I guess my question is, if you don't have to replace sewers, or you've relined them, how much does that change the scope of the project in time?
We're working with our, I don't, as I stand here today, I don't have an actual date. I know it's not going to be as long as it is for Phase 1, but I also don't know if we can get it all done, everything done this year on the job.
When do you think you'll have a revised timeline?
I would say within the next month. When you say?
Okay. As I said, prior to the implementation of the detour for Phase 2, we will have a schedule, and we will issue a newsletter, as we did both in June and September, and indicate the start of that detour. And as much as I don't want to put in there an anticipated time frame, we probably have to, because that'll be the first question people will ask. But yet it'll be the first thing that if we don't make that time frame, that Henry and I will regret putting it in there.
Well, and
so
Mike says
I got to be honest.
We said Phase 1 would be 10 weeks, and it wasn't 10 weeks. So we're a little hesitant saying how many weeks it's going to be because we don't know what we're going to find in some cases in terms of the conflicts.
If in fact we have all of those structures in the ground before we implement the detour, then I can be pretty confident in how long it'll take us to do the roadway improvements and put the curb in, the sidewalk, and pave it. That part of it is we have a very experienced contractor who does this all the time. They know how long in their production mode it's going to take, whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. We can hit that mark. It's those unknowns, and if we can resolve them ahead of the implementation of the detour, then I'll feel better about putting a date in there, but we will. I will tell you that it, as Terry said, it will be less than phase one. So.
And I think, Tim, you said the plan now is for them to, our scheduled date, is it May 1st to go to the detour or April 1st?
It's going to be sometime in April.
Sometime in April.
That's
So
planned
within
out.
the next month, we'd be talking, by the middle of the month, we would know, so we would get it out via newsletter. Yes?
The other question I have is, are you going to start on the north side of the road or the south side?
That hasn't been determined yet. And again, that'll be forthcoming in the newsletter information, and we'll try and get that out ahead of the start.
I did school district transportation, and I can think of right off the bat, one kid that we transport from Ridgecrest Apartments, which is on the west side. So if you start on the north side, that kid's going to have to walk across the construction zone if you do the 2 blocks between April 1st and the end of June. Because we pick them up on Ridge Road.
Okay.
So if you're, just something to think about.
And that's just one thing. If, either way, whatever happens, we can certainly talk, and you can let us know where this location is exactly so we can keep an eye on it and try and keep it clear and pedestrian safe and so forth.
Question in the back.
Combine phase 2 and 3. If you do that, will that require for the detour to be a longer period of time, or?
Yes. Yes. If you're, the thought with combining the two, let's just say that and I'm going to throw out numbers, don't hold me to these numbers, okay? Because we really don't. Well, let's just say each phase was going to take 10 weeks. So phase 2 would take 10 weeks, phase 3 will take 10 weeks. That's 20 weeks. If we go to combine them, it might be 16 weeks instead of 20 total. So that's the what the thought is. But what that enables, so to be a longer phase, the detour of it would be they'd be turning down, provided we stay in the same directions, and we'll have a discussion with the fire department. But they'd be turning down at Portland and then coming back up and around, back up at Carter, and turning at Goodman, and Hudson, coming back up at Hudson. Thanks, Tim. Getting my directions screwed up. So we'd be turning down Portland and then coming back up at Hudson to come around the detour, and it'd just be for that. It'll be that'd be longer than it would be the two together.
But one thing to add on that, if that's were to happen, you still would be able to use Carter. When you got to Ridge Road, you would only be able to go eastbound, though. So we would still maintain access at Carter, the intersection. So it would be a viable road. It's just when you got to the Ridge Road intersection, it would be a one-way at that point.
Right. If we're doing the work from Portland or Hudson all the way to Portland, the detour will show, because we're showing for Portland. We're always in our minds, somebody wants to go all the way around. We got to get them so they can continue all the way down East Ridge, so we got to get them to Hudson. If somebody knows where they're going, they would just take 104 to Carter and just come back in if you had a business between Carter and Portland. You'll still be able to get eastbound between there. It's just the detour route will be longer, the longer one. Yes, sir.
I threw that out because that's what we said first. I said, don't hold me to that. I just gave it an example. 10
What
weeks.
about phase 5?
We don't have. It'll take longer. We will have a better idea of that in future in newsletters. Yes, sir.
Gary, how far are you on those utilities? I mean, are they 50% done, 25% done? 70, do you have an idea where we are at?
Yeah, they're getting close, and we've asked them to prioritize their work, start at the west and work east. And I think the latest I've heard for phase 5, and again, this might change if they find different things, is sometime around May 15th. They were going to be wrapping up, hopefully, the entire project.
Everybody would be done by mid-May, is what they say. But and I'm not here to. This is not something to some unknowns, and we had to pull them off of where they were to come over and do some of the work they had to do here. But at one time, we were going to be done by the end of 2011 for some of them, too. So.
You really got a good jump on this stuff then. You're thinking about that being ending or thereabouts.
Yes, they have said that they're doing work now. Some are going to be done with a certain phase by sometime this month, and then the other phases by the middle of May. They're supposed to be totally done and have the job clear for us. Yes, sir.
I just had a question. The McDonald's on East Ridge and Hudson, the island that you guys put in, who's responsible for maintaining that? Because I have some customers that are, the way it is put in, they sometimes go over the island. And I feel that those breaks that are on the island there, they're gonna start eventually coming out.
They're going over the island to turn left?
To turn right.
Oh, to turn right.
To turn right and to turn left. I mean,
They shouldn't be turning left. That's why I asked what direction they were turning. Not supposed to be turning left.
They still do it, so if that piece starts breaking, who's responsible for that?
That's within our right of way, and I think we do that.
We acquired an easement for that island.
Yeah, we take care of that.
The other question in regards to the detour and the combination, combining phase 2 and phase 3. If you were to combine phase 2 and 3, which then, from the sounds of it, and again, I know that you haven't pinned it down, but there's a possibility of a 10-week and a 10-week. So that, again...
I shouldn't have said those date
times. I'm just saying, let's say it's 5 and 5.
Right.
By combining that, you're really creating a detour for a longer distance, number one, but secondly, you're affecting someone in 2 for a longer period of time than they would have been affected by only having phase 2 detoured.
That's true.
So, I mean, is this part of the consideration? Because, I mean, you're interrupting for a longer period of time a greater number of businesses.
Right, but we would be getting done overall with those 2 phases quicker, so we'd be getting out, even though we're impacting one of them, let's say phase 2, or both of them for longer periods of time. You're right. But we'd be quicker in that area. And it would give our contractor, if they did run into conflicts, as Tim said, what happens as we were working on the first phase is you got closer to Hudson and we ran into a conflict that we had to wait for the utility or wait for something to get done, and it was several days. Contractor is on one side of the street. They're at the very end of what they got to do. That's what they got to work on. They couldn't go down the street and do anything. Well, if we had extended areas, they could go down and do that. We could still possibly have them go down if they needed to go further down and do work out of sequence. We didn't let that happen under phase 1. That until the end, they did that a little, but we could possibly do that without a detour as well.
Is there any way to move more work to Knightwood to again reduce the amount of detour time? That first phase 1 was brutal.
That's something we have not thought about. It's more costly.
But it's the type of work. Sometimes it's the type of work that you can do at night too.
We can consider that. Yes.
Actually, the Hampton person answered a lot of questions I had about accessibility, but I do want to encourage more notification prior. Just one day is not enough, because we're talking about deliveries, employees access and things like that, so that we can work with our neighbors as far as, I don't know if there's enough room for delivery trucks and such to get into half of our accessibility to our business. It's at 1450 across from Tops, and we got some things over there that are a little bit difficult right now to access.
Okay.
Phone calls or snail mail might be a better option for notification.
Well, reach out to Mike, and he can as soon as he knows what can happen, if it's, and he'll let you. We'll get the word out, or have the contractor get the word out to you like they have, and as soon as we can.
The way it happens is once the detour, once the detour is set up, the contractor gets in and starts to work on the the reconstruction area. You'll always have access, whether it be a stone or a road plate. They'll maintain that access. Notification will be when they set up the detour. You'll know we're in there for 3, 4, 5 weeks. We do talk to the contractor to make sure he's notifying each and every one. I will relay this to them, that try to get advance notice. They have flyers, they hand them out. They did, I think, a very good job. We'll keep that in mind. But each business is going to have an access. Whether, again, when they box it out during the day, it may be some disruption because they got to dig through it. Once they dig through it, then they put stone right back in there. The trucks are literally waiting to dump stone in there to get you back in there, so you might be out of access for a very short time. They did that in phase 1, when they were doing the reconstruction. They know they have to maintain access at all times, so they try their best to do that. Because if they don't, I hear it, they hear it. So we tried our best to do the communication. I will pass this on to try to give advance notice, more than a day, for the deliveries. So.
Other questions? So what is the thought? There are some things with 2 and 3. So what is the overall? Here's all the businesses that are here that came that are interested. Combining them, is that a good idea or no? Is that the consensus of the group? Anybody strongly feel? A lot of people strongly feel if we didn't, we want to combine them. Okay.
I would combine it myself. I think if it goes faster, it's going to be a mess no matter what. If you get the whole thing over as fast as possible, it seems like the best interest of everybody. Because people are coming from, I'm in phase 3, I guess, and so if you're doing phase 2 and phase 3, people are going to be able to get it there a lot sooner.
It's a longer strip of non-enough traffic.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more the other way, Dan. I'm sorry.
No,
Not that, but
I guess the other thing I'd say, because we will talk to the fire department, is if we ended up and if we wanted to switch the detour, and I'm not saying we do, but if we wanted to switch the detour, is that bad for anybody? I don't know about the bus company, and Dan's here, but I don't know if that's bad. It doesn't really matter whether we switch the directions of the detour. From a traffic standpoint, it's not good. But from a response standpoint, I understand what they're saying. Yes, sir.
I guess my concern is mostly minimizing the detour. I mean, we're at the LA Fitness that's right there between Goodman and Culver, and it's traffic. We get a lot of check-ins on a daily basis. About 1,500 people have come through, and if it's just a one-way traffic, the fact that it's not going to be as accessible will deter people from coming to the facility. So that's our biggest concern, is having as easy access as possible and making the detours as small as possible, so that way we can allow the access to be as easy as possible. We have 2 entrances, so closing one entrance, obviously we can live with that, but making sure that the accessibility coming from both ways is our biggest concern.
Well, it'll be detoured in one direction, at least. And it will minimize, but your section will be. It's. I'm not saying it's going to be. It won't be as long. Hopefully not as long as what we ran into phase 1, but. You're the last phase.
That's phase 1. Okay.
Culver to Goodman. That's the last phase. That's the last phase. And our hope, as you heard Tim say, it's still our plan, and we're working with our contractor, seeing what the utilities are doing. Our hope is our desire would get it all done this year. Our next desire would be to at least get up to binder, so we would just come back in at night next year and put the top in. There's a possibility, depending on what happens with other things, that we don't do anything other than pre-work, that we don't do any of the actual road work on the last phase till 2014. But we will keep everybody informed in that through the newsletters. And I encourage everybody, I know everybody signed in, but if you haven't gotten the newsletters that Tim brought up and identified, we want to get the word out to people of what's going on, so people know. So get the, hang on. So get the, put your, make an asterisk next to it so you make sure, and we'll add you to the list, so it'll be mailed to you or emailed to you or whatever, so you'll get the newsletter.
I was going to say, I have created a separate list,
you do?
newsletter list. It's on the table there.
Okay.
If somebody isn't getting the newsletter and wants to be put on the newsletter list, by all means, sign up and we'll get you on the mailing list.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you.